Welcome back. This is day 10 of my new program of trying to get better at chess. The first thing that I'm going to do, as I have been doing every day, is analyze my rapid game from Lichess the previous night. These are games that I play on my tablet, usually on my front porch right before I come in and go to bed, and I usually don't have much chance or mental ability to analyze them at that time. So that comes in handy that I have a game to analyze here the next day, and according to this graph, it looks like I just had one spot at which I gave my opponent an advantage. The graph here says I had 2 blunders and 1 mistake, but that looks like the only one that was really serious. That was move 12 according to the graph, so we will get there momentarily. Let's turn on this. I've been getting the white pieces a lot over the last couple of weeks, and I don't select, I just click the random pairing. So the only thing I can think of is that I have a lot of opponents who have played too many games as white, so it's giving them the black pieces and that ends up giving me the white pieces. That's the only thing I can think of. It also probably means that here before too long, I'm going to get a lot of games where I have the black pieces and I no longer get a chance to practice the English opening. In this game, but I think both of us played normally until about move 6, because here, this is all normal, and I'm pretty sure I've reached this exact position before. Usually when they push that pawn, of course, it's to get this bishop out, and that's what they did, and that was a blunder. I think it's because my opponent missed the point of putting this knight here, and that's because I want to play my d-pawn. No, it's not. It's because the bishop's the only thing defending this. Okay, and then I made a mistake by not capitalizing on that immediately. Okay, yeah, so when they put here, okay, that's what I missed. This is, I'm surprised that's just a mistake. Okay, it's because it's my second best move to challenge the bishop immediately. But in the case that I challenge the bishop immediately, they should go ahead and take the knight instead of moving back, which is what they did. But yeah, instead of doing that, I think I failed. This is my problem here, that I failed to notice. I'm not used to fianchettoing. I haven't done that a lot until I switched to the English recently. And I learned that fianchettoing the light squared bishop is one of the main lines of the English opening. So I've started doing that, but because I'm not used to it, I'm not looking for that. A player who, I guess, has fianchettos often would immediately know once this bishop has moved that I should take that pawn. And it says that if I had taken that pawn, their best move would be to get this knight out, and then I would play h3, and they would have to choose whether to save the rook or the bishop. They would probably save the bishop, and then I would play d4. Wow, and just leave this sitting here aimed at that rook. Okay, I think even if I had picked the right move here, I probably would have just taken the rook on the following move, if they had gotten the knight out like it says. But anyway, I did challenge the bishop, because the last time I had an opponent that played here, my best move was to challenge the bishop. But I think in that case, this wasn't available. Maybe they had already gotten the knight out in that case. Okay, so they are supposed to take the knight now, or put the bishop back on its home square, because it needs to protect this. Of course, it doesn't need to protect that if they take the knight now, because they're pointed at my queen, so I would have to take back. Then they could play c6 to keep me from hitting that pawn. But because they dropped back, I can take that pawn now, but I can play g4. And see, the last time that I did this to a bishop and it dropped back here, g4 was my best move, so I thought it was here again. It turns out I was right this time, because the bishop has to keep running. And d4 is my best move here. Oh, okay, it's about equal with taking their b-pawn. Oh, b-pawn has moved up there. I'll be honest, I still didn't see this, and of course the whole reason I had put the knight here was to play d4, so I did play d4. It's good to see that that's one of my better moves. It is one of their best moves to drop it back here, and now I saw this pawn, and it is one of my 2 best moves. Okay, so they're going to lose the rook. When they get the knight out, it is not my best move to take the rook. My best move to castle. Okay, well, I wasn't sure if I should castle, what with all these, these pawns having already advanced over here. It is okay to take the rook, which is what I did. They're going to take back, and now I should castle, or play d5, or play rook to g1. Well, because they're pointed at it. Okay, here's my first blunder, and the blunder in which I gave my opponent an advantage. Well, it would be sad if I had to report to you that I didn't see their queen pointed at my rook, but I did see it this time. I know there's been previous games in the past where I did not see something like this, but I did see it. I just didn't know that castling would solve that. I moved my knight here because I thought the knight would protect the rook, and then I'd be a little bit more comfortable castling behind the knight sitting there. But that's a big blunder, because they can go right in here and keep me from castling. And it says if I did that, I'd want to play king to e2 so that my queen could protect the rook. My king would be protecting the pawn's protecting the knight, the rook's protecting this pawn. Let me use a different color. Okay, if I moved the king up here, that's if they came down here. If they came down here and I moved the king up, the king would be protecting the pawn, which is protecting the knight, which is protecting the rook. The queen would be protecting the rook would be protecting the pawn, and the pawn would be... So everything would be protected. So why would they put their queen in there? What would they do if I moved my king up? It says they would take here, I would take back, I think the reason my opponent didn't see that is because there's not an immediate advantage that's evident to me, and my opponent is around my level. We were within 10 points of each other in the rapid rating when we played the game. If I can't see why this is really good, then I can understand why my opponent wouldn't see it. I mean, I can see how it would be irritating. From my perspective, it would be a thorn in my flesh there to have the queen that close. I don't know what I would play if they did that. I don't know if I would put the king up, since the rook's already protected. I might be tempted to put my queen up just to add a layer of defense here. I don't know. But my opponent didn't see it. They still would have had a little bit of an advantage if they had taken this pawn now. And it says if they had, then I would play knight to d5, and then they would take it. And then I would take back. And then I assume, I can't see the rest of the line there, but I assume their queen would take. Well, I think that's probably why I wouldn't put my knight there if they took here and I took back. Let's see, no. It says if they took here, I would put my knight there first before taking back. So they would have gone up a pawn here, and then we would have traded knights, and they would have gone up another pawn. Yeah, I don't think I would have put my knight there. I think I would have taken back, but that probably would have been a blunder. Well, my opponent saw that this was protecting the rook, and they decided to do something about it. So they jumped that in there. I assume aiming here, I should have just taken it, okay? I didn't want to just take it because then they would take here, right? Pointed at the rook. And if I took back, then they would take it. But yeah, it says if I took there, they would take back, and then I would take here, and then they would take. That's what the line says would happen. So that's why I didn't take it. But apparently that would have been good for me. It would have been almost as good for me if I had taken with this knight, and then it says they wouldn't take back. I don't know why. It says they would take this pawn. It would also be fine for me if I castled now. 1.4. I don't understand why either one of those would be in my favor, but I did see that both of the knights are defended, and I thought, hey, what if I put my queen here, which pins their knight? Because I'm up, right? I'm up the bishop for the rook down there. Also pawn, looks like. I had a rook and a pawn for that bishop. Also, neither one of these is a check. That's the other thing that I noted, that from here they can't check me, so I wouldn't be in danger of losing my queen, right? If they move the knight anywhere, no matter what they do, I'll take their queen, and then I'll take back once they take my queen back. But that turns out to be another blunder, but this blunder wasn't as bad as my first one. My first blunder, when I put the knight here, that gives them a -2. But the second blunder of putting my queen here just takes us to even, and they're supposed to take on g3. And then I'll take their queen, and they'll take my rook, and then I'll take their knight. How are we even then? Because I'm still up on material. So they did that. I mean, I don't know if they knew that was their best move, but then I took their queen, and when they took back, I took their... That's exactly what Stockfish said would happen. It further says that they would take here, and they did. And I would take back with my pawn. Wait, I did play knight to d5. What? I just said, 4 or 5 moves ago that if they did this, I would not play knight to d5. But that was earlier when their queen was over here. Now their queen's not there. I just figured I didn't want to take here because they could take, and then what would I do, right? So I just went ahead and put this in here, thinking that they could take. I'm still up very slightly on material. I'm still up the rook for the bishop. So I thought I could trade it off. Well, not that one yet, but I could go in here to trade off for the light squared bishop. Or I could, take that bishop or the pawn if they moved the bishop. I have some options here. Also, it's defending that pawn. But it turns out it would have been better for me just to take the pawn with my pawn. Okay, but that was my second best move. And they weren't supposed to take my e-pawn. They were supposed to play bishop to e4, which is a fork. And then I would have to move this rook. Then they would leave their bishop there and bring this rook back over here. Okay, well, I don't think they would have found that, but I mean, this is a natural move. I don't know why that's a problem. I should have just taken it with the bishop. Okay. Oh, and it says if I did that they would not have traded bishops here. It says if I had taken that, they would have brought this rook over. Okay, well, I just took their dark squared bishop. I knew that they could take back with the knight to keep these 2 pawns together. They could even take with that pawn so that they would have 3 pawns together. They did take with the pawn, and then I took this pawn. And then they brought the rook over. But now I'm ahead, and I assume it's because I'm up the rook for... Well, now it says a rook for the knight. Oh, that's because I traded my knight for their bishop. And I was just a little bit ahead for the rest of the game. A little bit later, my opponent... I went forward to protect that, but my opponent tried to make some moves like this, which allowed me to get out of the way. They're supposed to take that pawn. They did, and then I took their knight, which doubles a couple of their pawns. I challenged the bishop. They went over here. Look, I think maybe they were trying to come in this way. But I was willing to allow that they decided to hope for a discovery check here. So I got out of the way of that. I moved that pawn up. Oh, that was inaccurate. I did it because I thought they were going to come here, but apparently they weren't. Oh, they decided to come for this one, which I just moved it out of the way. Now their bishop can't even see these pawns. and it's going to be a while before it can get to that one. And here I was being very careful because of their bishop to keep my important pieces on dark squares. I don't know if that's always the best idea, and I know sometimes you can't keep all your important pieces on dark squares or, light squares if they have a dark squared bishop, but I figured it's as good a strategy as any. They started bringing their king. I went after the bishop, which went down here. I don't know if that's any good. I doubled the rooks, which I think is okay. That turned out to not be good because I can play... Oh, I should have immediately just went down here? Well, they just would have brought their rook up there, wouldn't they? And then what would I have done? Oh, it says then I would have gotten over here behind that pawn. Well, I just aimed at that pawn anyway, and they should have moved it, but they didn't. They played that, so I can now escape through here. They went after my A pawn, which allows me to take one of their pawns. It looks like I'm +4 whether I take this pawn or this one. It would have been best for the king to take the pawn, but I took this pawn first, figuring I can always take this later. They took my A pawn and I took this pawn. They checked me thinking that would help, but it didn't because now I got another pawn and now I have a passed pawn. I think that's the first passed pawn of this game. I'm not sure what their aim was here. Oh, that was bad. Wait, it was +5 until they went over there. What should they have done? They should have moved over 1, but they moved over 3. And now it's up +8 if I play rook to e8. I guess that's because this pawn here is cutting off the squares in front of the king, and I would be getting ready to come across and checkmate them. And it says if I did that, they would try to prevent me from putting my other rook over there, but then I would just put the first rook here, and they would have to move the bishop. It says that they wouldn't. It says that I would take it because they would do something else. Okay. I guess this is a threat of checkmate. I should have been looking for that at this point, but at this point I wasn't looking for checkmate. I was looking to get rid of some other pieces and also to protect my own. So I put my rooks back together and offered a rook trade. They didn't want it. Oh, that's inaccurate. Well, my idea here was to get this pawn passed as carefully as I could. They can't do much, so looks like they're just shuffling their pieces while I march this pawn forward. Stockfish doesn't like my plan, but I like my plan. My opponent resigned here because I guess they realized they're not going to be able to stop this pawn. They have the wrong colored bishop to guard the promotion square, and they really didn't want to give up a rook for it at any point. Yeah, I'm not worried that I didn't find the best moves through that last stretch because once I knew that I was ahead and I had this advantage that they couldn't stop, I just decided to press it. Okay, I just want to reinforce this blunder here. I should have castled or played d5. I guess I can see d5 because it does stop the queen from seeing my rook. It does allow this knight in here though, and that's what it says that they would play. And then I would castle. It just looked like they could get in there. And you know from recent experience that I'm a little leery of castling once those pawns have moved. And I'm a little gun shy on castling anyway because so many of my opponents can break in there. But it worked out okay. I think in the future here, if I came across this situation, I would play d5 rather than castling. But also maybe I need to get better at fending off attacks once I'm castled. I just realized I look really red in this picture right now. I'm not actually this red, like it looks like I'm a tomato. Oh my goodness. Okay, well I'm still working out the color balance on this camera. As much as I would like to do something else today, like Puzzle Rush or even play a rapid game, I have limited time once again, and that's just the nature of my life. And that's probably one of the reasons I'm not improving at chess as fast as I would hope. Thank you for sticking with me. I'll see you next time.